that when you said to only pour hope? How was she able to pour hope into others?
So again, this began in my childhood where my mother started teaching these lessons. So my mother was, you spoke life and not defeat. I can't even recall ever in my lifetime when my mother could speak, ever hear my mother say the word hate or can't. Nothing. So you weren't allowed to be like, I hate Brussels sprouts. I hate broccoli. You were not allowed to say that. That just wasn't going to happen. So my mother felt like your words spoke life into your situation.
Hi, I'm Lennis Woods Mullins, and I love to help women to vibe, to be more vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered in midlife. So come on, let's vibe. So many of us, as we age in particular, are always looking for new ways of doing things. And sometimes in our attempt of finding new ways of doing things, we get a little frustrated, get a little confused about where do I start? What do I do next? And that's why I'm so excited to have with us Karen Wilson. She has a journal, it's called Protective Love, a journal of 52 lessons. And she shares her wisdom about the reflections of overcoming challenges, emphasizing resilience, purpose, and healing. An opportunity for you as a reader to maybe take a look at dealing with things differently, a new way of doing things. Karen is a writer and a consultant and founder of the Miles Ahead Consulting. It's a purpose-driven consulting firm specializing in work-life balance solutions, particularly for those navigating the very unique challenges of caregiving, which is something we all deal with in midlife. Karen, welcome to the Vibe Living Podcast. It is just wonderful to have you here today.
Thrilled to be here with you as well.
Tell me a little bit about you and how you came to write a book of 52 lessons about protective love.
So I've always been a person who, even as a young person, committed to journaling. I have journaled my whole life. And I really didn't start out to write Protective Love. It was a friend who knew that I had been a caregiver for 17 years plus, right? I entered into caregiving when I was 43 years old. And then my mother passed away in the height of COVID 2 weeks before I turned 60. So you can just imagine, right? Through all of the ups and downs, all the things that life will take us through between our 40s and 60s, I experienced it, and I experienced it not necessarily always being present. So my friend, my bestie, Dawn Duvernay Wilkins, shout out to her, said, hey, do you still journal? I think you've got something here in journaling, because she had been a large part in supporting me. So she was wonderful. She connected me to the best editor that life has on the face of this earth, and Holly Jenkins Livers, and away I go with Protective Love. And so we didn't even start off naming the lessons. We just knew that when we got to 52, we were at the end. But my purpose for doing this, once I really understood that it was just aligned with God and the universe of what I should do, because I understood that in all of our lives, if you share, we may need a caregiver. We may have already been a caregiver, or we may be entering in a series where we could caregive. And so I wanted people to have an opportunity when they took a breath to be able to capture, even in a person's physical decline, the lessons that their life was still teaching us. And while my mother's life was declining over those 17 years, I was still in a spirit of becoming and still learning from her. And so I hope that this gift really helps, just from a wellness perspective, people understanding that you have to take some time to journal, to meditate, to whatever you want to call it, in whatever form you want to call it in. And that's really what birthed Protective Love.
You're so right about that, because journaling, I look at it as a form of self-love. And one of the things that really has to happen, I think, for women over 40 in particular in midlife, in that journey, because of all the transition and change that happens during that phase of life, self-care becomes even more important. And I love the idea of focusing on gratitude as one of the things that you talk about. Why do you think that gratitude in particular is so important, especially as a caregiver and during midlife?
So gratitude, the Protective Love really honors my mother's teaching, right? From my childhood on to her taking her last breath, really, honestly. And gratitude was something that she taught as a child, right? If someone did something that was kind or And you came up in an era where people were like, listen, if Miss did the smallest of things for you, right? One, you didn't take any money, but you surely thanked her, right? So I learned as a child that gratitude was a reaction to something good happening. But in reality, what my mother's life taught me is that she lived in a state of gratitude. It was no longer a reaction to anything. And
Mm.
somebody out there may be listening to this, may be challenging with their health perspective themselves, that it was really a mindset. So she woke up every day in a state of this is a gift. And so that helps you to prepare yourself for what I call my journaling time in the morning is called morning glory. So I take that time to receive the sunlight, the rain. I'm out here in Philadelphia. I'm on the East Coast. We get all four seasons. We get a little bit of everything. Snows, right. So I learned within life's challenges and its struggling that gratitude is not a reaction. It really is a state of being.
Wow, I love that. It's the mindset. I just got through doing live on another platform, and we were talking about the importance of mindset, especially during midlife. Because of all the different things that happen, you have to almost have a certain type of resilience. And where did resilience come in for you when it came to caregiving? Because the reason why I was so interested in having you on is that so many of us are going to have this role as caregiver. Where does resilience come in?
Well, resilience is everything, right? And I know that I am not giving the right honor to the person who I first heard this from. It certainly was a platform, a spiritual platform where I was on, and I'll never forget it. The leader was saying, the longest journey you'll ever have is from your head to your heart. And when you're a caregiver, you don't really have a lot of time. You've got to really prepare yourself. Almost like you do when you're parenting with little small children. You got to get them ready for school. You got to get everything packed up. And so you learned through the journey. I learned resilience through the journey of my mother's life, right? She had cancer. She had a stroke, which really disabled her. They said she wouldn't live past a month. And here it is. I broke her home and she lived 17 years. But she journeyed through cancer twice, through COPD, through neurological dysfunction, through seizures. And each and every time she would show how you rise up. And so in watching her, and watching the way she lived, I learned resilience myself because I was going through this journey with her. And so she would just get up. It would be like, hey, I'm still here. We are going to put one foot in front of the other. And that's when I realized that it was really something I had to embrace mentally and I had to feel it in my heart in order to live it. And that's where the resilience, that's how I knew that I was resilient and I could overcome because I watched her do it and I shared in her overcoming.
That's amazing. And 17 years is a long time. First of all, of course, my condolences for having lost your mother. The loss of a mother is something that you learn to live with, but I don't know if you ever totally get over it. But it sounds like you've had a lot of time to be able to communicate with her right up until the very end. What were some of the key things she told you as her life was beginning to come to an end? What were the things that you began learning even more?
Here's the thing that is that's going to really be mind-boggling for you. When my mother had a stroke, her stroke landed, it was what they call a slow evolving ischemic stroke, and it landed on her language center in her brain. So while my mother was teaching all this, she couldn't speak at all. It took her maybe 6 months to a year to learn how to sign her name. So she was teaching without speaking. And so that took a whole nother set of principles in terms of patience. And so that's really where she knew that I would know. Like she knew, and I had to execute. And I could tell you stories as simple as we would be going in for her own cancer treatment, and no one would believe she was the patient. So my mother would have me encourage other people by her look, by the way she responded, right? Someone in here today is hurting worse than I am. And so she would just gesture to me to make sure that I went to encourage her. So everything that she did in those 17 years, in her impact on our family, on everyone who met her, caregivers included, the medical community, was all done with nonverbal.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you left that part out.
Yeah, yeah, that was all nonverbal.
It was all nonverbal. So she was able to, so her communication came from her gestures and her expressions on her face. Wow.
And I think I talk about the gratitude piece that my mother had horrific neuropathic pain. And so the touch, if you touched her, that it would cause her pain. But if you did the smallest gesture of kindness to her, she would reach to touch you. And anybody, if you're in the medical community, they would say, "Oh my God, oh no, Miss Ruth, we don't want to touch you." And she would insist upon it because she would want you to know how much she appreciated it.
Oh my goodness. So any kind of touch, unless solicited, even solicited, would be painful for her. So tell me this, because you said that your mother was steadfast in her commitment to only pour hope. How did, and just her existence alone was hope. But what did you mean by that when you said to only pour hope? How was she able to pour hope into others?
So again, this began in my childhood where my mother started teaching these lessons. So my mother was, you spoke life and not defeat. I can't even recall ever in my lifetime when my mother could speak, ever hear my mother say the word hate or can't. Nothing. So you weren't allowed to be like, I hate Brussels sprouts. I hate broccoli. You were not allowed to say that. That just wasn't going to happen. So my mother felt like your words spoke life into your situation. And so when she was no longer speaking, her energy spoke it. And that's why I know that it fuels something bigger. There was never a time when she was nonverbal that we didn't believe that she was going to be on the other side of this, because she felt like whatever your life offered you, it had purpose. And so that's where it all began. It was like, okay, your words, right? Even if you think about biblically, Proverbs 18 speaks about the power of life and death is in your tongue. What you say is fruit for your body. And so she just believed that. So her words were always, it, I've got hope. This might be tough today, but I'm in a state of getting through this. And I think I was just so blessed to have her. And to that point, and you asking me, even though she's not here, I feel like her journey was complete.
Mhm.
And I felt I'm not sad. I'm not sad to the degree that some would be sad, because I felt like my mother made that deposit for me, right? And she completed it. Like whenever I felt like, oh, this was wonderful, I always said, oh, God gave her favor, and then that favor fell on me. So I always felt like my mother was a gift that just kept on giving. And even with her not being here, now with protective love, it is able to give to many others who may be experiencing not caregiving, but maybe experiencing any kind of a challenge, or where they feel like they are constantly on a Ferris wheel and they are just not getting ahead. That this is why these lessons were so important. That was very intentional with the lessons, very intentional with what I was teaching, because I felt like it had ripple effects.
As a caregiver and a full-time caregiver, you had to have time at times gotten frustrated, tired, maybe even resentful because you're a human being. These things happen. What did you do to bring yourself back into a frame of mind that was where you wanted it to be? How did you pull yourself back from that?
The act of journaling, right? So that's why my friend picked that up, because I would step away and write. So not, and certainly I'm not professing that people should write today, because you could speak into the phone. There's so much you could do with technology. But I have physical books. And when it was really some of the roughest, toughest of days, I would take a moment down, right? I would take a moment back from the situation. I always had to remove myself from the situation, because a lot of the toughness in the journey came from the medical community. This is no offense to them, but it always came to she's at her baseline. A lot of my beat down came from you're expecting that. It didn't always come from her, because she was ready. She would look at you like, you giddy up, girl. We
They have their protocols in terms of what's supposed to happen. And
right, right. This is
outside of
what
that, anything outside of the baseline is
exactly.
so I know exactly. I come from the healthcare industry. I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know exactly what I'm saying. So I would have to take a step back, and then I would journal my way through that and just say, okay, I understand that. I understand that because one, they don't know my mother. And so two, I understand that this is what you have to do. These, what do they call them? Paradigm shifts, these therapeutic outcomes that they talk about. They have all kind of algorithms in hospital settings. So I understood that. And you want people to care and love the way you love. So I would have to take a step back and I would journal through it so that I would have an understanding of how to embrace that person or persons, decision makers, so that they understood that we were doing something different. And it always left everyone else better. We
Oh, I'm
never left
sure.
the situation worse.
Yeah, I'm sure because you're in the process of witnessing miracle after miracle, and that does impact you. And one of the things that's really important with patient advocacy is having the resilience to still be able to advocate because you're taking care of the person. That's one whole thing. Then you have the other thing about advocating for their continued care, even if they are, especially even if they are at the baseline, because that's a whole different kind of advocacy because of the predetermined dispositions of what they think is going to be happening, and there's nothing else that can be done. How did you keep from losing your temper with that whole situation? I should ask the question this way. What are some of the tips that you could give tired caregiver givers in particular when it comes to advocating for their patients,
So
loved
the
ones?
more information you can get about the system, the better. That's why my business is based on something very different than the book. It's based on establishing balance. So, you've got to have the right forms. You got to have health prayer proxy. You've got to have durable power of attorney. Because if you are going to be the voice of the caregiver, you've got to know that you have the power to do it. And then I tell people to immerse themselves in, because you've got access to the information now. You do have some access to get a better understanding of what the treatment is and what the definitive treatment is, and then really making sure that you reach out to the social worker in the system. People do not utilize the social workers enough in the system. They're there, particularly in a hospital setting. They are there. Even they're in there in nursing home, they're in rehabs. They are there to help you and to really not to be antagonistic with them, because the medical system, like the educational system, is burdened. It's overburdened, right? So you can't go in and you don't want to tug this. You want to have a partnership, and you want to let people know that you're there, and that is whatever is offered for the patient, right, is there to really help them, right? And then when they take a step aside from that, from doing the step in the process within the system, one of the things that I grew to do in journaling is I journal around themes. So to give you an example, in 2025, I journal around enough. So I journal around what defines enough. I pull it into every avenue. And my mother's situation, like the crisis, the times when it was crisis, the times when it was chronic, it showed me that I had to reach back to a theme so that I would be able to center myself. And it could be a word. I've journaled around not yet. That was the theme. I've journaled around, okay, we're not here yet. So it really helped me to say, okay, let me come back here, and now we're going to start this over again. And I always believed that tomorrow was going to be better. The world could be, it could be apocalyptic, and I would still believe that tomorrow's going to be a better day.
Yes,
So
yes.
that really helped me, and particularly if I hit a door that I thought was closed off to her, I said, nope, there's got to be another way. And
What's
so
the
that,
importance overall when it comes to maintaining resilience and advocacy and all the different things you do as a caregiver? Where does staying present fall in?
oh, that's the most powerful part of the journey, right? Like I said, the longest journey is from your head to your heart. And so my mother taught that, right? I believe, and that's in one of my lessons where she talked about you want to make a life while you're making a living. Because even before she got sick, which I believe that God blessed me. I know this sounds really a little off, but he blessed me with her illness because I was go. And both my husband and I were, right? So my mother's journey helped me to take a deep pause. That's probably, I'm striving for this, when reality, the most important things I do is to intentionally, right, invest in love and laughter and learning. And so that's just a part of who I became in all of this. And that's why I'm still in a state of becoming, because I'm still really grateful for every situation. Even in the worst of cases, I can sit back and say, okay, I'm still in that state. I'm investing in love, laughter, and learning. And it may not have a timetable to it. That's the other piece. So it's about consistency, not just, oh, we got there. So whatever you do from a wellness standpoint, you have to make it consistent. If you're going to walk every day, if you're going to do anything, if you're going to remove something out of your life, oh, you know what, I'm going to give up doing that. Then you've got to know what you're going to add into it. And then you have to be consistent with it.
That is so true. No matter what, it almost comes like the unspoken rule. I'm definitely going to do this one thing today for myself, if nothing else. That keeps yourself from falling all the way to the back burner, which is something that happens a lot with caregiving, is that the caregiver, I have stories of clients and of friends and family who ended up passing before the person that they were taking care of because of lack of their own self-care. It's really interesting because I know people think when they're caregiving, that they're trying to be productive, trying to be organized, trying to do all the things to make sure that loved one is cared for. But you mentioned something that was really interesting in one of the questions that your person sent to me. And it was something like about when did you realize that productivity wasn't the same as purpose? And I wonder if you could speak on that, because I thought that was very interesting.
That's the whole piece about really, and I think it was lesson 38 on it was really about this whole piece about making a life while you're making a living, right? So you're living it and you have to really have to understand, you have to embrace the fact that I'm sent here for something. And for many of us, and I won't say men versus women because there are all kind of roles and people do things differently, but sometimes people lose purpose just being a parent. They become a parent and they're like, they lose their purpose in too. So that's why I said it's so important to establish healthy habits for yourself. And I don't get to define them. I believe that you do it one journal entry at a time. That's why I'm so committed to journaling. But I can tell you honestly, I didn't start off journaling to where I am now. And I started off journaling like I was complaining, oh, that really hurt my feelings. I can't believe that happened. But I didn't have a voice to give to anything else. So I had to develop that over time to understand that I don't have to be busy, right? All busy is not a good busy. Sometimes settling it is just wonderful. And I'll give you an example, right? When I was a kid, because I'm in the East Coast, I liked sledding, I liked ice skating, I liked a lot of things out in the snow. Now you figure now, fast forward, hey, I don't even want to drive in the snow. I want to walk in it, I don't want to drive in it. But the first snowfall, no matter what was going on, I would always go out. There was nothing like fresh snow falling on my face. I didn't have to stay out in long because it's cold. It's okay. It's the first rainfall, right? First drops of rain. I'm like, oh my God, it's raining. It's like it's liquid from heaven, right? That's how I looked at it. And so these are the moments that I had to learn to establish so that I understood that there was purpose in everything, right? Sun has to shine and rain in order for flowers to bloom. There's purpose in every situation. And so it made me be less committed to productivity than it was to honoring what I'm really here to do. And I believe now with Protective Love, with this journal, that I really am walking into my purpose. And that's why I am just elated, so grateful to the giver of life, the gift of me with my mother, because it allows me to tell the story through lessons.
That is so beautiful. And you're absolutely right. Your mother was a gift because she gave you something. Many times out of tragedy comes something that's so wonderful on the other side of that. I know that intimately. I lost my mother as she was only 56 and she was hit by a fire truck on her way to work.
Oh my
And it
God.
was a very painful experience. She still had my mom and dad still had a 17-year-old at home. I had just had my third child who was 6 weeks old, and all my kids were under four, and my other sister was in grad school. So we were all busy living lives and everything else. And then this happened, and it was so tragic. And over time, I developed an anxiety disorder. And at the age of 51, I walked away from corporate America and all other kind of stuff to get well because I was determined to find a way to get well without having to use pharmaceuticals. And that's when I discovered the mind, body, spirit movement and wellness and holistic living. And 18 years later, here I am. So out of that I would have never gone into this had that not happened. So out of that tragedy came something that I know my mother would have been proud of. And I know I would not be doing it as a result of it and earning more than I was when I was working as an executive in corporate America. But it started with that tragedy. And I think the passing of someone is always a tragedy in terms of the loss.
Mhm.
But as you said, depending on how you look at it, there's so many blessings. And when you look back at everything that you went through for the 17 years with your mom, what do you think was the greatest blessing of that time?
So there's so much. there's really is just so much. And just so I want to speak to caregivers everywhere because there's a different level of caregiving if you're in someone's home versus somebody being in a nursing home versus someone being at home. And let me say that I am truly sorry for the way you lost your mother because I don't know that kind of pain. So I can't speak to that because your mother was in the fullness of her life and you lost her. So for me, it was easier to accept the loss because my mother was not living the life, the fullness of her life. Right. And so I want to make sure that people really understand that and that there's always going to be a level where you can crash and burn. Always. This everybody, you hit a wall, you're like, oh, I hit the wall. And it's for you, the thing I love that you shared, it's like you identified, hey, this is the wall I'm hitting. The most important thing we do in this conversation or any conversation that we have around wellness is understanding, hey, I've hit the wall. Oh, this is called overwhelmed. Oh, I'm depressed. This is called depression. Oh, I'm anxious. This is called anxiety. Once we understand what it is and we make ourselves self aware, that's where the power lies. That's where the true power lies. So I am like, my heart breaks for your heartbreak, but you took that brokenness and you just allowed yourself to be full with something else. And that's exactly what I've done. And so that's the reason why I can tell people today, yep, 17 years, it was a lot. I made many mistakes, but I got up from each mistake and I started every day as if it was a fresh. And then I said, look, I'm probably not going to accomplish everything that I want to accomplish in the week, in the day, right? But whatever I give, let me give it 100% so that I can say I'm fully present in this moment. And I can't tell you that it's easy, or nor can you, because that journey that you had to accept to walk away from corporate America, all of that, to even identify it in yourself was a lot. Because again, when it's identified, it's hey, let's give you some form of pharmacy medication and let's keep going, right? But if you saw yourself in light of something else, which means to me, your mother's light was super bright because that's what I see in you today.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And so is yours. I know your mom would be so proud. I like to think that she already knows. And the thing that's so wonderful about what you're doing by gifting everyone this journal, so to speak, in terms, because it is a gift, is that you get a chance to share just a little bit of her life and her light that she shared with you. And isn't that what it's all about? When you're blessed enough to be able to have someone who's influenced you the way that your mom has and be able to impart some of that to someone else. That really is the epitome, I feel, of all of our purpose. We were not created to be on islands. No man is an island, as they say. We all need each other. There's certain messages, certain things that we came here to deliver. And some people sadly never get to that point of figuring out what it was they were to deliver, what their purpose was, what message they were supposed to share, what experience. But you've been blessed because you've been able to identify that. And everybody who's listening, definitely take a look at the show page. Her link to her book is there, as well as her website and social media. Karen, thank you so much for being on the Vibe Living podcast and sharing your story with us. It's been wonderful having you here today.
Oh, thank you. It has truly been a blessing. And I just wanted to share one quick thing with you that when I finish the lesson, and I do hope that it blesses many readers. I really do. I hope that within the wellness space, people embrace it. But I always envision my mother being in heaven and reading it. When I finish, like, I just envision, and I envision her saying, you know what? I did not know that girl was listening, but she was paying attention.
Isn't that something? I think that about my mom sometimes too, because I lost her when I was 31, and we were just beginning to have more than a mother-daughter friend a relationship, but have more of a friendship because I had children, and our children married, growing up, being. It's interesting though because I really didn't feel like I was a real woman until after she passed. Because as long as mommy was there, and I look back at that and I say to myself, how did I raise four daughters without my mom? How did I help my sister without my mom? Because she was only 17 at the time. She turned 18 the next week. How did I help my dad through all of that? How did I help my sister who was far away from it that had to go back to grad school? I don't know how I did that. All I know is that our mothers, or or most mothers anyway, impart certain things in us if we allow those things to come forth. And the situation was such, and I believe this is in your case too, that those seeds that had been planted came forth and sprouted. And that's what propelled us to where we are now, is the seeds that our mothers planted.
Absolutely. It is, like I said, it's a gift that keeps giving, and you embody it, mind, body, and soul. From the moment I spoke to you before this, our initial conversation, I remember even telling you, like, oh, I wrote down what V.I.B.E, the acronym meant for me.
I saw it. Yeah.
I was just, like I said, I thought I didn't know the completeness of your story, but knowing that and think about all the lives that you have since touched really embodies all the deposits that your mother had made into you and what you've done consequently with your sister who was young, both sisters, and your 4 daughters. They are all truly and richly blessed. And I'm blessed from the experience with you today.
Thank you so much, Karen. I appreciate that. And thank you to all of you who are listening to this podcast. My goal is to be able to bring to you some of the premier experts in the field of mind, body, spirit wellness so that you can figure out how you want to live the second half, or in my case, the third half of your life, and what kinds of lessons and things that you want to take with you. And I hope you've had some aha moments and that your awareness has been raised in terms of the kinds of things that you want to be looking for if you ever do become a caregiver. But even besides that, in terms of your awareness of what your purpose is and how you want to impart your message to the world. Thank you so much again, Karen, for being here. And thank you to all of you. Don't forget to comment and share this podcast. And we have over 140 podcasts for you to look at. I think they're all wonderful. And they all have to do with being vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered. V.I.B.E in midlife. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. And don't forget to V.I.B E. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to the V.I.B.E Living Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, and share this podcast. Have a fantastic day, and don't forget to V.I.B E. Bye-bye, everybody.